count me down. Good evening. Welcome to the January 27th meeting of the Danvers Conservation Commission. We operate under the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Chapter 26 of the Town of Danvers General Bylaw, the Wetlands Protection Bylaw. After each applicant presents his or her request and the board has had time to ask questions and discuss the project, we will accept questions from the audience. Because this is a public meeting, it is required by law that you give your name and address first. Although we may disagree on the issues raised, all persons present during this meeting are expected to be civil to all other meeting attendees. This includes members of the commission, staff, abutters, senior citizens, property owners, and project applicants. We also request that you confine your questions to the project and only as it pertains to the Wetlands Act. We cannot handle, nor do we have jurisdiction regarding such things as noise or traffic. All problems not related to the Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Danvers Wetlands Protection Bylaw must be taken up with other appropriate boards. Moving to our agenda, our first order of business is a roll call. Peter Wilson is present. Vanessa Curran?
Present.
Chelsea King?
Present.
Ann McGill?
Present.
Michael Splain? So Michael is not with us at the moment. So the first item on our agenda is a request for determination of applicability for 24 to 42 Cherry Hill Drive, DCC file number 22-01. The applicant Abionmed has requested to continue the hearing until our 2/24 meeting. So if someone can make a motion, we'll continue that hearing.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing for 24-42 Cherry Hill Drive, DCC file number 22-01 to the February 24th meeting.
May, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next up is a notice of intent for 160 Andover Street, DEP file number 14-13. And I understand they did get a number?
They have not gotten a number.
Okay, the other one then. Okay, so the applicant is PMG Northeast. And who's here to represent the applicant?
I'm here, Brian Levy.
Hold on one second, Brian. Sorry, guys. We need Brian, can you say something?
Testing 1, 2.
Just a second. Brian, can you say something?
Testing 1, 2.
Okay, if you could turn his volume up a little bit. All right, just give us a second to turn your volume up. I apologize. And then we are good to go.
Okay, thank you. Can the members of the commission hear me?
A little bit.
One more second and he's going to turn it up. All right, go ahead, Brian, please.
Okay, can the members of the commission hear me?
Yes. Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Just so you know, I cannot see you. I'm seeing somebody's kitchen, but I will proceed.
Brian, do you want me to pull up the plans you provided, or do you want to share them?
Jesse will share them when we're ready to do that. I think someone just joined the meeting. Was that Mr. Spillane?
No. So you're not going to be able to see the board the way we have it configured with the television. It's always the people at home have to see the board, and you have to be broadcasted. So that's how it's going to be. I apologize.
Understood. No problem. So let me proceed. My name is Brian Levy. I represent PMG Northeast LLC. With me here is my client tonight is Gary Kilfeather. PMG is one of the largest fuel distributors in the eastern U.S. with about 1,200 sites along the Atlantic coast including 60 in Massachusetts. Also with me tonight from the project team from Colliers Engineering, Jesse Coakley, the project manager, project engineer, and Kevin Jameson, our wetland scientist. We're seeking approval of a new notice of intent tonight for the site in 160 Andover, and a small waiver from the 50-foot no-build zone. I'm going to, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'm going to do a brief overview. Then I'll turn it over to Jesse Coakley to walk through the submission that's been made, which is a set of plans. And then he will turn it over to Kevin Jameson to talk about the proposed landscaping and a planting plan for behind the building near Crane Brook. This site you're familiar with from a couple of weeks ago when we were before you is 160 Andover. It is a gasoline station with a convenience store. The site is about 1.32 acres. It's located on the south side of Andover Street or Route 114, along with several other commercial uses. The site is a corner lot at the corner of 114 with Avalon Bay Drive, and it is not far from the interchange of routes 114 and 95. The site's relatively square and flat, and as I said before, Crane Brook is in the rear of the site. The site has been a gas station since about 1950, so for over 70 years it's been a gas station at the site. It is the beneficiary of several variances and special permits over the years, but most relevantly and most recently, the site received in 2006 permission to be raised and rebuilt as a new gas station and convenience store by Cumberland Farms. In connection with that redevelopment effort, the ZBA granted use and dimensional variances for the self-service gas station with a roughly 3,000 square foot convenience store within which there is contained a 355 square foot Dunkin'. Also, in connection in 2006, the Conservation Commission granted an order of conditions under the state act and the local bylaw, primarily for work in the riverfront under 310 CMR 10.58, subsection 5, the redevelopment provision, which allows work in areas degraded prior to August 7th, 1996. PMG purchased the site in January of 2020 and inherited a situation where Cumberland Farms had not implemented the landscaping and planting plan that were planned for the rear of the site adjacent to Crane Brook under the OOC. So therefore, there was an open order of conditions with no certificate of compliance. Now, PMG is seeking to add a single lane drive-through around the rear of the building to serve the Dunkin'. Recognizing the importance of the riverfront issue, PMG started its permitting process back in 2020 by conferring with this board twice informally that year. We then conferred with MassDOT, which advised that it would have no problem with the addition of the drive-through lane so long as it was approved locally. We've already received a use, dimensional, and parking variances from the zoning board, and 2 weeks ago, the commission approved the amended order of conditions and a certificate of compliance. And what that exercise did was to eliminate the incomplete landscaping planting plan from that order of conditions, provided that a new plan be forthcoming, which we are presenting this evening. Under the riverfront regulations, the key standard is, quote, the proposed work shall result in an improvement over existing conditions of the capacity of the riverfront area to protect the interests identified in Chapter 131. I'm now going to turn it over to Jesse and then to Kevin to walk you through how PMG proposes to meet this standard and also justify a 195 square foot waiver from the 50-foot no-build zone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn it over to Jesse.
Thank you, Brian. Can everyone hear me okay and see the screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
Jesse, if you could make it full screen mode, we could probably see more detail. If that's all right with you, just a suggestion.
So I have a number of slides. I'm just going to move this out of the way, the video, so I can show everything. So this is a similar presentation to the plans we had shown the commission 2 weeks ago, with some slight updates, more tailored for this evening's discussion about the NOI that is being requested. So the first slide was really the existing conditions plan from the 2006 set of plans, where you can see, the full property there, Andover Street to the top of the page here, just off the top. The second one is an aerial image that reflects that same time period, pre-2006. I believe it is 2005. So again, Andover Street at the top here. You can kind of see the Crane Brook area to the south, excuse me. The next slide here is really the 2006 layout plan, which shows, the continued encroachment and redevelopment of the riverfront area, the 200-foot area, for the new convenience store, for the additional access drive to the access road to the west. And then this was a plan we added, which was part of the order of conditions from 2006. And what I wanted to do here was give the commission a clearer picture of the two areas that are kind of noted in the order of conditions. So within the riverfront area, the proposed alteration was 45,237 total square feet of riverfront area. So that is the area outlined in red here on the 2006 plan. It basically goes from Crane Brook 200 feet up to that riverfront line, which, as you can see, kind of bisects the, at the time, proposed but now existing gasoline fuel canopy. The permitted alteration under that was about 37,561 square feet. That is the area shown in blue. And that was what was referred to as the degraded area at that time. So that essentially is from that same 200-foot line all the way back up to the limit of the wetland line. So the difference is really the actual wetland surrounding Crane Brook. That area was not proposed to be disturbed. It has not been disturbed, and we are not proposing to disturb it. Our proposed disturbance for the drive-through is within this area that was previously permitted for under that 2006 order of conditions. So I just wanted to make that a little bit clearer with this visual representation of where exactly we are proposing that drive-through lane.
Quick question, Jesse, where is the alteration that you're applying for a waiver for?
I will show you that in a future slide.
Okay, thank you.
I have a graphic for that makes it very, very clear. So this was the proposed landscaping planting plan at the time. It proposed some hemlock along the border here, kind of within or just beyond some planting of the right along Crane Brook, and then kind of this grid pattern of a random selection of plantings. As we know, this is an aerial from, I think, 2008. You can kind of see those bordering hemlocks installed closer to Crane Brook. This area is completely cleared out, regraded, and then you can see what is an attempt at establishing that grid pattern. But you'll see, as you know, that did not survive. The existing as-built, plan, the existing conditions pretty much matches the proposed layout. Building's in the correct spot. The trash enclosure is on the right-hand side of the building. The access drive is where it's supposed to be on Avalon Bay Drive. And the gasoline fuel pump is there. But what is not there is the fully established plantings that were meant to be maintained. The invasive species have really grown in there. The prior operators were I guess dumping some things back here, some debris. It's become a little bit of a garbage, and we've added a couple photos, which you'll see on the next slide. Photo 1 is from the rear, I guess we'll call it the southeast corner of the building, looking west, and then photo 2 is kind of at the southeast corner of the building, looking south. You know, to give the commission a flavor for what's out there. So again, photo 1, the southwest corner of the building looking west. This is pretty much exactly where the drive-through lane is going to come through, right in this area, almost directly at you. And then photo 2 is a picture taken pretty much at this corner looking out into the wetlands, and you can see that there's debris, some asphalt pile is here that's noted on the as-built survey. And it's just worth noting that, you know, as part of that 2006 Cumberland Farms NOI, the alternative analysis specifically said the project site is previously developed riverfront area since it is comprised of degraded areas, including an existing gas station, retail store, parking areas, and other impervious and degraded areas shown on the site plan. These areas are impervious or include land lacking topsoil, which were in existence prior to August 7th, 1996, and have existed in such condition, in various conditions, since gas station uses were first constructed on the site over 55 years ago. Owing to the historic use of the site as a filling and service station, the parcel has been filled and paved in the past, pursuant to several orders of conditions and various special permits and variances. Certificates of compliance have been obtained for those orders which were subject to review by the Danvers Conservation Commission. As you know, we were here 2 weeks ago to amend the most recent order of condition and get a certificate of compliance for that. And now we are seeking this, you know, additional redevelopment of the riverfront area. So here is the proposed layout plan. You can see the drive-through, which is 15 feet in width, which is really the narrowest that could be for one-way traffic. It is also hugged as closely as it could be to the rear of the building to allow for a vehicle to make the turn around the corner and then access the drive-through window. And we ended up moving the trash enclosure further to the east, also to try to limit any further disturbance into, you know, the critical area, the first 100 feet, the inner riverfront area, if you will. Then the next slide that I have is the proposed landscaping plan, which also shows some of the site grading and stormwater improvements. So the improvements that we are proposing, one is to clean up that existing trash and debris. It does require us to go into the 25, or excuse me, the no disturb zone and the no build zone to actually take those asphalt piles out. You can kind of make it out in this corner. Oops, my apologies. Trace it for clearer, so the board could see a little bit better. So that is the area where like this current asphalt pile is. So cleaning that up and then installing the drive-through lane and providing some water quality mitigation as well. There were some discussions at the original informal appearances that we had with the commission about how to best do that. We ended up designing the drive-through lane with a couple of curb breaks along the southern curb, which would allow the water to flow over into a grass area and then into an infiltration trench, which would provide additional water quality benefits. Then it would go into a perforated pipe and into an underground system to mitigate any peak flows, and then tie into the existing stormwater system and discharge at the existing outflow point. So we're not creating a new source of stormwater discharge. We are maintaining and reducing the flows, and we are providing additional water quality benefits as a result. Additionally, we'll come back to Kevin to talk about the plantings, but I did want to show the graphic to the board based on the question for that 5.5% disturbance. So here is the same plan, essentially. We just removed the plantings just for clarification's sake. And the colors on here align with the requested legend that is in the Danvers regulations and bylaws for the wetlands. So again, just so we're kind of establishing Crane Brook to the bottom of the page here, the flagged wetland boundary in green. There is the 35-foot no disturb zone in red. And then there is the 50-foot no build zone in orange. We then have the 100 and 200-foot riverfront lines in the two different shades of blue. And the gray hatch here represents the approximately 195 square feet of disturbance in the no build zone. We do provide a calculation on the plan. Per the regulations, a waiver can be requested up to 20%. The total no build zone of the project is about 3,500 square feet. So our proposed 195 square feet represents about 5.5% of that area. So that does comply with that total amount of disturbance in the no build zone. So I will go back to the page here with the plantings on our landscape plan. One thing to note is we do provide, some seed mix here, and this will be at, a mild slope right around the drive-through lane itself. Obviously, we want it to be somewhat flat for water quality purposes up to the infiltration trench. And then we have some proposed grading there, and the plantings that we are proposing should also provide some slope stabilization in that area as well. I'll turn it over to Kevin to talk specifically about the plantings that were selected themselves and kind of their purpose and the cleanup of the invasives as well.
Thank you, Jesse. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Good evening. So our natural resource professionals worked with our landscape architects to come up with what I would say is a naturalistic planting scheme that's composed of native species. The species noted on the plan, they're called out by abbreviation and depicted in the general location are going to be planted, but there's also on this sheet is a planting schedule that lists the numbers and types of species. So what you'll see is there's a variety, good diversity of native species that are proposed. Those include 4 eastern red cedars, 2 service berries, 2 river birches, 8 red maples, 1 black gum, for a total of 17 trees, native trees being planted in the riverfront area. There's also a number of shrubs, native shrubs that will be planted in conjunction with those trees, and that'll include 12 silky dogwoods, 31 drooping leucothos, and 39 arrowwood viburnums, for a total of 82 native shrubs. Also included are some ornamental junipers around the trash enclosure, garbage enclosure. So we feel that this naturalistic planting scheme of native plants within the riverfront area is an improvement over an existing degraded condition and also an improvement over what was essentially a failed attempt at restoration in 2006. This planting scheme and the species provide a number of benefits, or they basically support and enhance the functions and values intended within a riverfront area. I'll go through a list of those for you. These plantings will provide benefits to stormwater and water quality through a reduction in runoff rate. They'll promote recharge. The trees will shade the area, as will the shrubs, to result in a temperature reduction for any stormwater runoff. The vegetation will filter sediments, and as Jesse indicated before, this is kind of a sloped area leading down to the wetlands, so they'll provide some, the plantings will provide good stabilization for that slope. The plantings also provide wildlife habitat. A number of these species are seed-producing species that'll provide food for wildlife. They'll provide nesting habitat and resting habitat and shelter for a variety of species. Where the native plants are proposed is currently occupied by invasive species, particularly Japanese knotweed. So this entire square footage of native species will essentially take the place of and outcompete the invasive species that are currently there. So it will result in a reduction in invasive species for this riverfront area. And then there's going to be some aesthetic value to this as well. It's going to provide a nice woodland, shrubland transition to the wetlands between the developed area and the wetland, and also screen the developed area from the wetland. So in short, we feel that this planting scheme and the species selected, comprised of native species, will achieve those functions and values that are intended for the riverfront area.
So thank you, Kevin and Jesse. Mr. Chairman, that's our presentation.
Okay, I just want to go through each member of the board and see what particular questions or comments they might have, and then we'll go from there. You are aware that there is no DEP number, so we will not be voting on an order of conditions tonight. But this is pretty much just an exercise in clarification, just to answer people's questions as best we can. Okay, so let me start. Chelsea, do you have any questions?
Sure, yeah. So to touch on the previous failed restoration attempt, do you guys have a plan to kind of help ensure that this restoration attempt will actually take?
Yes, so that's a great question. We do want to come up with some type of maintenance agreement that would be acceptable to the commission. So this is kind of what we had in mind. The landscaping contractor shall guarantee the plant material within the planting area for 1 year after the date of conservation agent confirms completion of the planting installation. The landscape contractor will monitor for any invasive plant species within the area where plants are installed during the guarantee period. If invasives are encountered in the planting areas during the guarantee period, they shall be removed subject to approval of the conservation agent. We also suggest that the owner provide the conservation agent with proof of securing a landscape contractor to provide routine site maintenance to ensure the planting area is established as intended under the approved landscaping plan during the guarantee period. At a minimum, these services shall include routine lawn mowing and maintenance, and we note that no grass clippings or debris shall be left in the riverfront area. Spring and fall landscape cleanup, refreshing the mulch beds in the spring only, and then performing a monthly visual inspection of the planting area, survival, and health of plant material, and the memos to be provided to the owner to that effect. So that was what we had come up with, but we certainly welcome your input as well.
Looks good to me.
Any other questions, Chelsea?
No, that was all I
Good.
had.
Vanessa, any questions?
Yes, thank you. So I do think on that landscape detail that you just showed, 1 year seems maybe a little short to me. Is there any option of extending that maybe to 2 or 3 years, just to really guarantee, the knotweed is rather hardy, and I'm not sure that 1 year is gonna be sufficient to really crowd it out and knock it back sufficiently.
Sure. I
Yes,
think
typically what we've seen, what I've seen is from some boards is 2 growing seasons as the period within which we need to maintain or replace. So if that would be acceptable, we'd be happy to go along with that.
Georgia, what do you think?
That, I had wrote down 2 growing seasons, so that's what we have in our standard order.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. And then I just have another question. My memory got refreshed on this from reading prior meeting minutes. Where is the snow storage designated to be now, and where will the snow storage be after the drive-through is constructed?
That's a great question. I believe the snow storage at the site now, let me back up to the 2006 plan, if you'll allow me that. Oops, sorry. I don't know if they actually designated an area in the 2006 plan. I believe it does get deposited on the west side of the building, and potentially along the grassed island that's on the site. We would still look to use that, but we do designate, now that we have the drive-through lane and the trash enclosure, we kind of designated that area in the back there for them to deposit the snow as the snow storage area there. They could still use the grassed island to the west, and then they could also use some of the area, but that has been landscaped. So we obviously want to respect that. That was also part of the reasoning for, if you see on the landscape plan, there's kind of a white strip here, kind of behind the curb line. We were giving like 4 or 5 feet off the curb for that, as well too. And then the landscaping is behind that, so it's not to damage it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about using, because then you'll be within the 50 foot, and I know it's not building anything, but you're still getting within 50 feet of the wetland. I'm not sure I think I'd prefer to see that western grass island, and then the area behind the trash enclosure really prioritized, instead of putting it south of the drive-through lane.
Okay, we can update that.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, Ann, any questions?
Yes, the purpose of the trench, I'm assuming that will be capturing any melted ice and snow from the road itself, is that correct?
It's actually a water quality treatment type of system that is like a certain soil media that any of the stormwater drainage, with the way that we have the site graded, sorry, I'm using my hand on my own screen. The way that the site is graded is the drive-through will kind of angle to the back here, and then we have breaks in the curb so the stormwater can flow over that and then into the trench itself, kind of naturally going across the grass, and then into this infiltration trench, which provides some water quality treatment because of the soil media there. So yes, ice and snow melt from the road would also get into that as well, and it would provide the same treatment, and that has its own maintenance requirements as well.
Yeah, because my concern was the leaching into the woodland area of the salt, and so the trench will really basically block that.
So we also have in here a perforated underdrain that will capture the material and then brings it back for additional treatment in this underground system, which then has its own maintenance requirements. That the lid be removed, that sediment gets removed from this, and then it ultimately discharges there. So it does comply with Mass DEP water quality requirements, to ensure that quality is met.
Okay, okay. If I recall correctly, the pavement for the drive, then beyond it, it's like 2 or 3 feet before the drop-off. Is that width still correct?
It's a little bit more. We keep it a little bit flatter. We're flattening it out to allow for that water quality benefit to actually be realized. So the actual drop-off doesn't start until after several feet after the trench, probably 3 feet after the trench. So you're probably looking at the drive lane and then another 10 or 12 feet before the slope starts.
Okay, good, excellent. That was all I had.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Ann.
Peter, sorry, just a quick reminder, if we could speak up for the people in the audience. People at home can hear us, but if we can be loud for the people here.
Makes it difficult when you're not facing the mics that are supposed to pick up your voice.
Oh, okay.
Hey,
I'll move it.
okay, thank you, Bill.
Maybe you could sit in the front row so you could hear a little
Yeah,
better.
you can move forward.
Okay, couple further questions. The plantings that you're proposing, are they in the same footprint as the plantings from the original order of conditions from 2006?
They slightly extend. We're going a little bit further east and west, I would say. The grid pattern before was a little bit more centered. We are kind of filling in the edges a little bit more, but otherwise, yes, in
But
the same
in
in the
depth.
same degraded area, though.
Okay. And just let me ask you for an opinion. Why did it looks like the first plantings were made based on that historical photo. I'm just thinking that the planting was done. So my question is, why did they fail?
If I'm speculating here and traveling back in time, and Kevin can chime in here as well, but I think it's probably a result of the invasive species. And when I look at it, kind of just taking control and the maintenance not really being adhered to. And I think, with what we're proposing to try to avoid that scenario, as much as possible. So I also, look at some of the tree species that they have, and it says random selection. So I don't know if that was truly random, if that was followed, if any substitutes were allowed, that I don't know what was actually planted. So that could also have an impact on it. They may have planted them in a bad time of year and they didn't survive, and the guarantee period was up and things were over. It's a host of things that could have happened. I don't know if Kevin, if you have any other theories, or in your experience, if you've seen anything.
I would agree. I mean, it's speculation, but all those points that Jesse highlighted, it could have been time of year they were planted. It could have been just the nursery stock being poor nursery stock. We don't know if substitutions of species that are really not well suited for this area were made, and we don't know what the maintenance was for these species. We've seen, instances of a number of things over the years of, why things may have failed. It's just tough to say without going back in time. I could say that, hemlocks, it planted in the wetland that may not have been a good choice, but it's, it could be a variety of reasons.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, George.
I wanted to note also, from just a quick review too, it looked like a number of the plants that they had proposed were more upland plantings. And it seems like what Kevin's proposing here is a little bit more wetland or facultative wetland derivative plants, and I think that may be more appropriate here. I'd lean more on Kevin because he is the expert, but just comparing the types of plants and species that they are, it appears that what you guys have chosen this round and the way it is planted just seems a bit more in line with what's out there now.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
and
the flourish
that's a great
better.
point. A lot of these species, they actually can occur along a gradient of upland to wetland, and definitely in transitional zones, being facultative species like red maple and arrowwood viburnum. So, yeah, we're optimistic that these are a good choice for this site.
Okay, because we will be looking for some sort of guarantee. I'm not that sure if that's the right choice of words or not, but we do want this to succeed. Where in the past, because this is pretty much the crux of our decision is allowing this area to be disturbed and to be replanted. So we want it to be done right. What type of maintenance, I know you mentioned maintenance, what type of maintenance is done to ensure that the plants that you want to survive do survive and the invasive species do not?
So we had proposed, but really it would be kind of a landscape contractor that is familiar with plant appearance, plant health, and also identifying the invasive species. And that's why we recommend as part of that, maintenance plan, a monthly visual inspection by that expert, because catching those invasives early is the way to best remove them without generating additional disturbance. I think if I was, again, speculating, why the prior plantings failed is because the maintenance was being conducted either not at all or very irregularly or infrequently, I should say, that the invasives grew too fast, too quickly, and too much time has lapsed between, and none of the plants were salvageable. And then it would become more of a ordeal to go in and disturb it. That's why we also included some of that language that, the conservation agent would have to approve going in there to do that type of work as well, so as not to create more damage. I think Kevin may have mentioned this in one of his benefits of these plantings, but we do propose a number of trees that, should provide some shade cover as well, which should also help, shade the area and prevent some of that invasive encroachment. These shrubs were selected to survive in that area, but by hopefully creating that dynamic as well, that should also be kind of a natural inhibitor, we'll say.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think, listening to all the comments, I think what makes sense, since we can't close the hearing tonight anyway, is between now and the next hearing, now that we've proposed some initial language which relates to maintenance, to work with staff to try to tighten that up for you. So when we come back next time, you'll have sort of hopefully staff approved recommendation for the wording of the maintenance provision.
Good, thank you. And just as one final piece to that, I think we will be requiring a bond, that you post a bond to make sure that this work is done properly. And I think I heard 2 growing seasons before. And we can hammer that out when we get to the final order of conditions. But we will be looking for a bond just to guarantee that this work is done. And then one final
Understood.
question that I have, the waiver that you're requesting is just to disturb a parcel of land that's still within the riverfront area, but there's no building going on in that particular piece of land. Is that correct?
no building in terms of structure, just a piece of pavement for the driveway.
Okay, good. Okay, so we know we can't approve tonight, but we'll just finish the discussion as best we can. So I think we've gone through every member of the board, save for Mike. So let me just ask if there's anyone in the public that has any questions or comments. Go ahead, Mr. Duggan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matthew Duggan. I have two items I'd like to just talk about. First is the vegetation that you've spent quite a bit of time on. I'll try to be brief with that. And then also I'm also interested in knowing more detail about the stormwater management system, not just the trench, but also it looks like there's a retention, a series of squares there right where the drive-through is. It looks like it's underneath the drive-through. So first with the vegetation. So if you go out there today, and I was out there last summer, I remember going out in the back there, and it's definitely an area that doesn't get any love. There's all kinds of debris, as was mentioned earlier in the presentation. You can see the invasive, there's the knotweed, and it also looks like Phragmites. I'm familiar with the Japanese knotweed because there's several pockets of it along the rail trail, especially just north of Chestnut Street. Its stuff is bulletproof. The more you cut it, the more it grows. It's got like a rhizome root system, and especially if you disturb it while it's flowering. So I can't imagine how you can keep that at bay just with some trees or whatever, because it grows in the shade without any problem. So 2 growing seasons, it seems like there needs to be some longer term management, vegetation management in the back there. I'm not sure what the commission can do to ensure that that happens, maybe other than an order of, for your order of conditions. But I think what's going to happen is that the plantings and the knotweed are going to be in contention, I think. And I don't understand how you can say otherwise.
Excuse me, Matt, just one sec. Georgia, could you just take note of that, and, when you have your discussions, just, keep that in consideration, please.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, when you disturb that stuff, when it has the flowers, that's where the seeds are, and if you try to transport it, so just landscapers may not really understand that that's making a situation worse by just whacking away at it. It just causes it to become more aggressive, I think. The water retention system, so today there's no vehicles behind there, so I don't want to say it's pristine, but when we introduce motor vehicles at the rear of the building, now we're talking about fluids, oil, antifreeze, whatever, and also litter, more litter now, cigarette butts, and that kind of thing. So it's not clear to me how that debris and that water contamination is going to be intercepted before it flows down that hill into the brook. And this brook, Crane Brook, it goes for many miles. It goes into the mill pond, and then it empties out into the Crane River. So you're talking about water that's contaminated here. And to be fair, there was a Morton thiokol site, so this area isn't really kind of pristine anymore. But maybe the applicant can just delve into a little bit about the retention system there, and who's going to maintain that and make sure that it's going to continue to operate as designed down the road, not just 1 or 2 years from now, but 10 or 20 years from now. Is there going to be some type of ongoing maintenance? I don't think the town is going to be responsible for that. So the property owner needs to have some kind of scheduled process where they can go in and make sure that things working as designed.
Gentlemen, could someone address that, please?
Sure thing. So to expound a little bit more, this is a curbed drive-through lane. So the way that it's graded is everything is funneled kind of towards the back along the curb line. It's very mild slopes. We're not talking about steep slopes here, 1-2%. Then we designed 3 breaks of the curb for the water to kind of go over the grass area for about 5 feet or so more, which is the preferred water quality method to kind of break up these impervious areas, as opposed to dumping into a catch basin, to a pipe, to a storm detention basin. They want to the intention is to mimic stormwater patterns as they exist today. So today the water falls in this area, goes over the grass, matriculates down the slope and into Crane Brook. What we're doing now is obviously we recognize the pavement is an increase in impervious surface, but also as you know, contaminants. So that would go across the grass area into this infiltration trench, which again is a couple feet deep. It's a specified soil media that has to be cleaned and maintained every so often by the property owner. And at the bottom, there's a perforated pipe to kind of collect the water and pipe it back to this underground system. What looks like rectangles on the plan view here is actually a series of arch chambers surrounded by stone and filter fabric. So that allows for additional sediment and debris to be trapped in that area. And then there's an outlet control structure on this side to help throttle or mitigate the flow coming out. That then will connect to the existing stormwater system and discharge at the existing point as it does today, not increasing flows, not increasing volumes, and providing the required water quality treatment by DEP. To your point about maintenance, these are oftentimes I've seen maintenance agreements in the towns be required to be prepared. It probably would not be too dissimilar from the one we are going to discuss with staff regarding the landscaping. And I believe those are typically tied to the approval, or some other mechanism to allow for, the property owners to be aware of that, even if it gets sold or changes hands, the current operator leaves for another job, retires, whatever, that maintenance plan is passed on with the land, runs with the land. So that's what I've typically seen.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think the commissioners are well aware that the order of conditions will be recorded and will run with the land.
All right, so just in closing, so thank you to the applicant for providing that information. The concern is just that, within the next 2 years, 1 or 2 years, things are kind of done in the proper way, but as time goes by, commission members go, staff moves on, we lose track and we forget about some of these conditions, and there's not really, I think sometimes they're overlooked, that the conditions aren't, the applicant isn't held to the conditions. So that's the fear that I have, or the concern that I have. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Could that be the condition that we would add on then? That this water treatment system needs to be maintained?
So we do require that as a condition, and because it's subject to the stormwater standards, that's an automatic requirement
Okay,
under the
good.
order of conditions. So it'll be in there twice.
Good, thanks. Anyone else have any comments, questions? Mr. Bradstreet?
Bill Bradstreet, 18 Essex Street. If I was listening, the plowed snow is going to end up in front of the dumpster? Or did I not hear correctly? I'm
I
old.
think behind the dumpster.
Okay, is it going to be required for it to be removed, or will it stay there while it's melting? Normally plowed areas collect a lot of debris or whatever. If it's going to stay there behind the dumpster and melt, is this system capable of taking that additional water and the contaminated waste that might be there?
Good question. Can someone answer that for us?
Yeah, so I mean that snow melt, right, would matriculate down. The site is graded so that it does enter the system. Typically that would be at a lower rate, but yes, this is sized for the storm events, you know, I think up to and including the 100-year storm. So that additional runoff from the snow would be handled by this system, yes.
I just heard mention of the 100-year storm. We seem to have the 100-year storms every other year, so it's kind of a misnomer. I'm just concerned with the contamination. I've seen, and I think we all have, that's why they don't allow plowed snow to be dumped in the ocean because of the contaminants, or they believe they try to because of the contaminants it contains. We can't dump everything in the ocean anymore. But that was my main concern, was the
Okay.
that, or if the snow needed to be, as it is in some locations, need to be removed from the site, because if there's too much snow, it takes up too much space and it's an impediment to the operation. Just a question, just throwing it out there. Thank you.
That is,
Thank you.
that is detailed, correct, Georgia, in the order of conditions where they would store snow?
If the commission explicitly does not want it stored in the 50-foot buffer zone, it would have to be noted in the order of conditions.
Okay.
And it's behind the dumpster, is that, that's not within the 50, is it?
That's outside the 50, yeah.
Yes, it is outside the 50.
Okay. And I think most of your snow would probably go on that grass island on the other side of the property anyways,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
right, you're welcome. Okay, since there's no DEP number, I think we'll have to continue this. But you folks, do you want to come back at our next meeting, which is February the 10th?
Yes, we would appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. So I have, for my takeaway notes, discussion with staff on maintenance of the vegetation and the stormwater, including a bond provision, and clarifying the locations for the snow storage. Was there anything else that the commission members would like to see for next time?
No, just as long as we have a good detailed conversation over the plantings and our degree of confidence in that they will prosper or thrive.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We will be back on the 10th.
Okay, all right, so if someone can make a motion, we'll continue this hearing until our February the 10th meeting.
I make a motion that we continue the hearing for 160 Andover Street, DEP file number incomplete, but 14-13 for the February 10th meeting.
Okay, a motion's been made. Just a quick question before we proceed. Do we have confidence that there will be a DEP number by then?
I would surely hope so.
Okay, 'cause
Yeah, we submitted for it prior to the last meeting. We were like a month ago, so we just
Yeah.
don't have it yet.
okay, let's presume that we're gonna have it then.
Yep.
And if not, we'll just continue, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can give Georgia a heads up before the hearing whether we've got it.
Okay.
Okay, all right, good, thank you. All right, so the motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good enough. So we'll see you at our next meeting.
Thank you very
Next
much, Mr.
up
Chairman.
is,
Thank you.
a notice of intent for 51-55 Pickering Street, DEP file number 14-1374. The applicant is DCAM Construction Corp. And who is here to represent the applicant?
John Paulson from Atlantic Engineering is online, and one of the owners, Cheryl McDonald, is in the audience there.
John, we can hear you nice and clear. I just want to ask John, were you planning on sharing your screen, or do you want me to pull up the plan?
Either way, sometimes it's easier for you to do it from your end.
Okay, on this case, it may be easier for you because we can see your mouse, but if you're not comfortable attempting, I'm happy to pull it up.
Look, I've never used this particular program before, so let me see if I can just share it.
We'll give it one shot.
Where is the screen sharing?
Do you see the camera button?
Yeah.
The microphone button, and then there's a weird arrow inside a box pointing up.
Oh,
If you
okay.
hit that, it gives you the option to share the window you have open now or your whole screen. That's just me. Hello, everyone. Vanessa, that's what you look like when you talk.
Yeah, that's why I stopped putting my camera on.
All right, it looks like we may be getting somewhere.
He's not sharing it, though.
Well, I think he's sharing his desktop, it looks like.
Oh, beautiful.
I had to put it from my second screen, my big screen that I use, over onto my laptop screen.
So can you make it a little bit bigger?
I will.
Wonderful. And then you are good to go. Sorry, Peter, to take over there.
Okay, so this is a site that was bought by Cheryl and her brother, and it was divided into 3 lots, and they decided to take and work on lot 3 to start with. And so without realizing it, we did not realize that we were in the buffer zone to the river. And so we filed a notice of intent after we had actually started construction. This foundation is in out here, and some of the grading has been done, and there's a stockpile of loam back here. So I will go back to the application, and we are in the riverfront area. The lot was created in 2021. Lot 3, each of the lots is about 20,000 square feet. Lot 3 is the only lot that is in the riverfront area, a portion of it. It is very overgrown when we started. In fact, my field guy said, I have to wear chaps to go out there because the thorns were so thick. And that's what he did in order for us to do the topo out there. Well, those thorns are effectively gone now. And we located the river from a couple of different local GIS maps to get an approximation of the riverfront area on the lot. Did not want to go onto other people's properties to delineate the riverfront. There's 2 properties that I'll show you in a minute that are immediately adjacent to the river and have significantly more effect on the riverfront there than our proposed lot. Let me go down to those for a minute. So this is our locus in here. The house is about where the red rectangle is. The house is a duplex, and it is as close to the street as we can put it. And it's about 8.5 feet off of the lot line, so we're as close to each of the lot lines as we can put it. The river starts from a head wall here and heads out this way and goes across the old railroad track line. You have this apartment building and the parking lot for the apartment building that are between the river and us. And you have a single family home that has quite a bit of stuff in the yard that is adjacent right to the lot that we're building on right now. So we looked at what the act indicates. We have 11,545 square feet of the site that falls in the riverfront area, and we are proposing alteration of about 4,800 square feet, where 5,000 square feet is allowed, either 10% or 5,000 square feet. We looked at the alternatives, which were fairly simple out here, leaving the site undeveloped, which is not cost effective, so it's not practical. Making the duplex of footprints, making them smaller, which is not economically viable. They're only about 1,200 square feet to start with. And moving the foundation on the lot. The foundation is as close to the street as it can be and is 8 feet off of each of the lot lines. So really nothing can be done. So the alternative conclusion was to leave the buildings as it sits. So going back into the plan, again, we've got zoning 8 feet off the lot line, zoning 8 feet off the lot line on this side, and we're at minimum zoning on the setback from the street. So we have the 2 duplexes, the 2 driveways, and the utilities in the front, and then the 200-foot riverfront line is the blue line that's on the plan here. So there's going to be a proposed lawn area back here, and I'm limiting that to get the 4,800 square feet because we do need a lawn area in the back. You can see that the lot goes back quite a bit further, but that's going to remain undisturbed. This is effectively the area that is the limit of the disturbed area now. Where they put the stockpile over here is mostly outside the 200-foot riverfront area, but the bulldozer and the grading and so forth that they had done, I can't remember if I put any pictures in or not, was in that area for the limit of work. No, I did not put any pictures in, but I can share some pictures if you want to see them. So that is about the limit of what we're looking at doing. And we do have a DEP file number. I don't know if anybody's looked it up. It's 014-1374. So I'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks. Let me ask the members of the board first, and then I'll follow up with whatever questions are left. Chelsea, do you have any questions?
Just one about is what we're seeing on the plan the full anticipated extent of the work, or is there any further plan for patios or anything like that coming up?
I don't believe that there's any other extended work. Most people want a deck of some sort, but I did not show that because I did not have that in the house plans. Cheryl is there, and she can answer that question, and we can always add those onto the plan if she's got an answer for that.
You gotta
Sorry,
go to the
Cheryl.
Could you
podium.
identify yourself too, please?
Cheryl McDonald, 51 Pickering Street. So the units have walkout basements, and we would like to do a small patio, so when you walk out your basement slider, you're not in the mud. And then there's a deck above that with there aren't any stairs from the deck down to the yard.
But they are not included in the plans?
They're on the building plans. I'm not sure why they're not on this, but
Yeah, because they'll need to be shown on the plans.
I can,
I can add them to the
we can
plans.
add them.
Yeah.
So,
Right, because I think if we don't see them on the plan, to build them, you'd have to come back and ask for permission again.
And I also think the intent there was if you're going to be adding impervious surface that's not being calculated into this very close number to 5,000. You're at 4,803 and you didn't include any patios or porches, so I think our concern
if
here
it-
is that you could go back and add a 500 square foot porch that's not included in that riverfront, so that's why we need to see
I will,
everything.
if I need to, I will reduce the area in the back of the lawn area and so forth, so.
Okay, all right. Just as long as it's taken into account.
Okay, good question. Any other questions, Chelsea?
No, that was all I had.
Okay, Vanessa?
So, the house is already built, is that correct?
It's
And-
pretty, it's foundation, I think it's framed.
The
right?
foundation is in, I don't, Cheryl, did you start the training at all?
Okay. And so, the area that is proposed to be lawn, has that already all been cleared out and disturbed already?
It's too loud down there.
yes, that was disturbed when we were putting in the foundation and stockpiling the dirt.
Right, so, when it says proposed rear yard, that's existing currently, because
Well-
this is after the fact.
I just put on the screen a picture of what it looked like out in the back of the foundation.
Okay.
I'm just trying to wrap my mind around how, if they do want to put in the patio and porches, but the disturbance has already taken place, how do we reconcile that? Sorry. Do you want me to repeat myself?
If you would, and you're blocking, because of the mass, you're blocking away from the line.
Sure, I was just trying to figure out how to reconcile, because the house has been built, the yard has been cleared. If they need to add additional square footage for the patio, but the other work has already been done, how can we reconcile that? Georgia, do you have any insight?
Well, Cheryl could show it on the plan for what they want to do and then come back, and then the commission approves it. That's the cleanest, easiest way to do it. She could come back with an amendment. Depending on how far it is, there are a lot of avenues. The new homeowners could come in for a minor project permit potentially. But I would say if you're here and you already have the site open and altered, it would be to your advantage to add what you're doing onto the plan. And that way it's all official and approved. And if you've already showed it on your building plans, and it sounds like that's what you intend on doing, then the commission would definitely need to see it on their plans.
I'm just going to pull it up and see if I.
Yeah, no, of course. Did that help, Vanessa?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Ann, any questions?
No, not at this point. I think what we could ask, we've asked, because it doesn't sound like she's putting any pavers or anything else in the far back of the lawn. We're really concerned about what's happening right next to the back door.
Right, so,
I just put a picture of the building plan. You've got the front is on the right-hand side, and you can see the small deck that's right here. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just a little seating deck off the living room.
Okay.
But I can add that onto the plans. It's up in the air, so it's not really at the ground level, so it's not really.
Yeah.
It's going to be shown as a second story deck, if you want to call it second story, because it's a walkout.
But future owners, it's a walkout basement, is that correct?
That is correct.
So in all likelihood, they're probably gonna wanna build some sort of patio or something there. So, either you're gonna ask for permission now, or the new owners are gonna have to come in and go through this whole process again, so. Seems to me, it's, if you made some provisions for it in your plans, it just, takes a little encumbrance off of the homeowner when they buy the house. And I just have two other questions. I'm just asking this rhetorically because I think I've already seen it, but nothing else in your project area where your 3 lots falls within the 200 riverfront jurisdiction, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and my next question is just, I'm probably asking it for staff as much as for anyone. Does the building inspector, when he grants a building permit, does he have any kind of overlay that says this is going to be questionable around the 200 foot?
Yeah, so the town of Danvers does not have a state-of-the-art permitting system where he puts in an address and it kind of puts a red flag that says near a wetland, call Conservation Commission. The town's historically just operated based on knowledge, and so on this one, I will say, similar to the issue the applicant had stated they had, that they were not aware it was in the riverfront area, given the separation from the house and the multi-unit apartment. But I will say that Jim Butler and I, the building inspector, are in constant communication. And when you have worked here a bit long enough, you definitely have Woodvale. That's an obvious situation where most likely, more than not, you're going to be pinged for Conservation Commission. But there are some scenarios like this where that's not necessarily something that would be on even my radar. So no, simple answer, no, there's nothing.
Okay. 'Cause, a month or two ago, you sent us that river map
Yeah.
of it would seem to me that we could make some kind of overlay over that. It says,
Oh, I mean, he has GIS, and he uses Mass GIS and Oliver, so I do want to preface that he puts that in, but it's not every single address for every single building permit he has. It's the same way we don't necessarily check all our Conservation Commission things for zoning compliance, but, so it's a working process.
yeah, there's got to be some way where they all can interrelate.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is that you're going to have to come back with some edited plans just to cover those, any patios or decks that would be built in the future. Is that correct?
Because I'm building at this, so you need to see just on right-hand unit.
Miss, you go to Mike, so we, thank you.
I can't hear what's being said out there.
So I just want to ask the question, you need to see the deck on the right-hand unit. The left-hand unit, is that involved? Because that is out of the 200.
That's correct.
Okay. So the deck and any kind of patio we want to do underneath.
Right,
Yeah.
just to prevent
Okay.
having to come back again.
Okay. No
Cheryl,
problem.
Is there a fence there now? I'd also say fencing too, if that was something you guys were thinking about. That should be shown on the plan.
Okay. Is that it? So deck,
Yeah, so
patio?
with George's point with the fence, if there's any fence proposed, that should be in the drawing as well.
Okay.
Fence,
All right.
paving.
Okay, so is that something you could have done in the next 2 weeks, or?
I believe so. John,
We can
that's up
have-
to you,
We
actually.
can have that done in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
All
Yes,
right, so we could continue to our February 10th meeting, and you'd be
perfect.
good with
Okay.
that?
Cool.
Okay, that said, any questions from the public? Seeing none, okay, so I guess we would like to see a motion that we continue this to our February the 10th meeting.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing for 51-55 Pickering Street, DEP file number 14-1374 to the next meeting on February 10th.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll see you at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For old or new business, there's an emergency order that George and I discussed and I approved for 200 North Street, which is the
Yes.
Glen Mobile Park, Glen Mobile Home Park, formerly known as that. Now I think it's a different name. But George is just going to give us a quick overview of that and just, it's pretty much just for members of the board's knowledge.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as Peter had said, and I emailed this out earlier to the commission a few days ago. So let me zoom in here so everyone can see. It is hard to tell without having been to the site the severity of the erosion, but so there is a mobile home at the Glen Mobile Home Park. This site is pretty historic in that it was built probably in their 20s or 30s that these structures have been there. So they're not up to code. You would see kind of the wetland impacts we have now would definitely not be approved, how close the trailer was installed on the bank. And it was held up by some railroad ties and fill. So those railroad ties are failing. And I would say just in the past month and a half, this whole side has collapsed even further. So it's definitely an emergency in our book in that the mobile home and the tenants living there, they continue to live there. They will, I believe, stay occupied in there. But it's definitely a hazard in that all that material is falling into Nichols Brook over here. And of course, the hazard for the homeowners there. So today they did stabilize around the site to get access. This will be very similar to Frostfish Brook. If the commission recalls, some members may not have been here, but or if you've driven through the Woodville neighborhood, you'll see certain sections of Frostfish Brook that's completely armored stone and it's stabilized. The project will be doing something like this, but on a much smaller scale on one side of the riverbank. I think it's about 150 linear feet that they're going to be stabilizing. As a little bit of background, the mobile home was owned by one owner, and I think there's about 77 homes there, so they were paying rent. It's now co-op, so it's tenant-owned. So now that they have full ownership of the property, they want to take as many measures as they can to keep it stabilized and keep it tight. So that is the emergency order. It starts tomorrow. They have 30 days. But the kicker here is that they will be filing an NOI as soon as possible. So they'll probably be submitting that next week to cover this whole work because it's definitely likely going to go past the 30 days that is allowed. But this emergency order allows them to physically get the machines on site and get the contractors ready to get started and do the work. And the Sumco is the company that's doing the work. So I've met with Steve King twice on site now, and Sumco, the company is great. They've worked in town before, and they really only do bank restoration projects. So they expect to be in and out pretty quickly, as quickly as can be. And if any of the commission members are interested in going or stopping by or wanting to see, just let me know, and I'm happy to show you. I brought Peter back. It is a little bit windy. You can get a little lost if you don't know where you're going. So. Does anyone have any questions?
Just to clarify, the project is going to take more than 30 days, obviously.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
after 30 days from tomorrow or today, they need an approved NOI to continue.
Correct. They can, if within that 30, if for some reason they have not filed their NOI and received that approval, so the DEP can approve an additional 30 days. And if for some reason they run into a place where they can't pause for a week or something while there is that waiting for a DEP file number or to get in front of you guys, the DEP can extend that a little bit. But the timeline they're on, I think they're ready to file that NOI for the first meeting in February, if not the last meeting.
So we're looking to see them February
Yes.
10th?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, anyone else have any questions for Georgia? No? This is not a public hearing, is that correct? So-
That's correct.
Okay, anything else, Georgia?
No, that was all.
Okay, then I think we are through with this evening's activities. So if someone can make a motion to adjourn, we will move on.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the January 27th meeting of the Conservation Commission.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.